It's January 2017 at the headquarters of the African Union here in Ethiopia. An IT engineer is looking at the servers in this building, and something seems off. The engineer notices that often in the middle of the night, these servers are connecting to some server in Shanghai and uploading emails and audio files. The African Union headquarters was built in 2012, but it was not paid for by any African nation.
The impressive new headquarters of the African Union, entirely funded by the Chinese government.
This building was a $200 million gift from the Chinese government. It was designed and built by Chinese firms with Chinese money. And yes, the servers were installed by Chinese engineers, who, it appears, left an intentional backdoor into the servers so that they were easily accessible. The African Union IT team eventually removed these Chinese servers and installed new ones. The Chinese government literally offered to install them for them, but they declined. The local IT people also swept the building, and they found microphones embedded in the furniture and in the walls. The whole building was bugged and had been feeding audio and internal emails to China for like 5 years since the building was built. China building a headquarters for the African Union and then spying on it is a pretty good symbol of what China is up to in Africa. And that's what this video is about. It's about how a growing China has rushed into Africa, mainly by building a bunch of stuff. Roads, trains, dams, mines, ports. These projects are a part of China's growth as a superpower. And it shows how this country is projecting its power on the continent of Africa.
But there are questions here over why the headquarters of such an important African organization is entirely the work of Chinese construction, labor, and money.
Okay, so there's this very predictable thing that you see time and time again as countries get powerful. As a country gets rich, they often start looking outward, both economically and militarily. Let me explain what I mean here. 50 years ago, China was a very poor country with a huge population. But eventually they opened up to the world. They opened up their huge population as a workforce for cheap labor, and their economy exploded.
China's agrarian, urbanizing fast, you betcha, but still agrarian.
Most in terms of land, not population.
Come on, Michael.
No, you're wrong about this.
So now China is a very rich country. And remember, rich countries start looking outward. How can they project their power, connect with other countries to continue their growth? They do this for a couple of reasons. The first one is the economic reason. In the same way that the US got really rich and prosperous and started to look outward to China for cheap labor, China also got rich. And its labor eventually got expensive, wages went up, and China needed its own option for cheap labor and new growth opportunities. So they started pouring huge amounts of money, like $300 billion huge, into Africa. Okay, so that's the economic reason. China grows really fast, their growth is slowing down, so they need to invest in emerging economies, is what the economists will call it. Economies that haven't developed very quickly yet, but that with a little bit of investment could start to grow. Untapped markets. But the economic explanation is only half the story here. In China, economics and government power are not very separate. So to understand what China is really up to, you have to understand the geopolitical motives. And to do that, we gotta look at a map. Here are all the countries that China has projects in. And yes, I've just highlighted every single country on the African continent. I mean, besides this one down here, this little tiny country of Swaziland, they're the one holdout on all of this. These projects range from transportation projects like roads and trains, to energy like oil and dams, to real estate projects like housing developments, and then mining for things like copper. You have everything from a shoe factory in Ethiopia to a $6 billion Chinese-financed dam in Nigeria, to a massive suspension bridge in Mozambique, the longest in Africa. I mean, these projects are everywhere, even here on this tiny island off the coast, where China has poured millions of dollars to build housing, a stadium, an auditorium, a library, as well as their national parliament. China built it all. There are too many of these projects to even count. And honestly, if you take it as a whole, a lot of these projects have been a major benefit and economic stimulus to these countries' economies. But why is China doing this? What are they up to? Well, in addition to all the economic value of investing in emerging markets, China's president also claims that they're doing this in the name of cooperation and friendship.
坚持以非洲方式解决非洲问题。
The African way. Let's dig into this and actually see what these projects look like and how they are built, and if it truly is the African way, whatever that means.